This is the tripod fish, and today I'm going to ask a question that's part science, part poetry, and part... Wait, what? Does it dream? It's a story that takes us on a journey to discover how deep-sea fish feed when food is scarce, whether they are indeed sleeping in the dark or just resting, and what their brains do when the world goes quiet and they have to wait for hours. And if they dream, what do they dream about? Phantom prey? Pressure waves in the water? Or the memory of motion itself? Bathypterois grallator, one of the 20 or so tripod fish that lives in the deep sea, balances on 3 elongated fins like a forgotten bar stool. It's a sit-and-wait predator with a spider's PhD in patience, living in total darkness or almost total darkness, and often beyond 10,000 feet, 3,000 meters. They are indeed sometimes called spiderfish, a nod to their cunning strategy. Several species possess rays of modified wire-like fin rays that fan forward from the head, forming a delicate spiderweb-like lattice. These structures are exquisitely sensitive to touch, designed to detect the faintest movements of prey like drifting shrimp as they approach the fish's mouth. Strangely, the one that's most commonly pictured is grallator, and that one doesn't really have these rays moving forward, but they are actually there, just pointing upwards. They're all usually seen standing still, presumably waiting for hours for the slightest morsel of food to drift by. But could it really be dreaming while it waits? Normally I wouldn't have bothered asking, not of a fish that perches motionless on the seafloor, almost blind and alone. But the science has changed. Fish brains are more complex than we once thought, and with new tools we can now watch their neural activity in ways we never could before. Patterns emerge, rhythms, flickers. For the tripod fish, the surface sun is just an echo from the past. It still carries a circadian rhythm, the 24-hour cycle of the spinning earth. But that rhythm is likely weak. Down here, more direct cues take over. They're always observed facing the current, waiting for the plankton they eat to come by. And if you notice that one in the background is at the exact same angle as the one in the foreground, and that's no coincidence because that's where the current's coming from. Even at 10,000 feet, the current isn't constant. It pulses with tidal cycles, internal waves, and occasional shifts, just enough to deliver food and stir behaviour. When the flow stalls, feeding stops. That would be a good time to rest. So they're not immune to timing events from the surface far above. They even breed seasonally, so they must be getting cues too from the time of year. At any rate, there's obviously times of activity and inactivity, and likely sleep. Tripod fish seem completely still when seen by passing ROVs, unless they disturb them, of course, but we don't know for how long the fish wait. Something called stable isotope analysis, comparing fast and slow tissues like liver and muscle, can reveal not just what the fish ate, but when. Unfortunately, it hasn't been done for tripod fish, but it has for similar deep-sea species, like the abyssal grenadier. It shows the grenadier eats very little and not very often, and I really mean very little, about 0.02% of its body weight every day. In human terms, that's like living on a grape a day. Although, I have to say, this fella's been helping himself to scientists' bait a little too much. They also discovered that it eats both live food and carrion, and that food fall from above, the surface waters, is very important, with sudden population spikes happening when something like a whale carcass falls to the seabed. This makes a lot of sense as a strategy to live in the deep, where food is often very scarce. Stay still and conserve energy, but be aware of rich food that might come along from time to time. These are all reasonable assumptions for the tripod fish too, though it's a far more specialised feeder. Studying a fish that lives 10,000 feet down is no easy task, but the tripod fish isn't the only one that stands tall on leg-like fins. In much shallower water, the red-lipped batfish uses its fins to lift itself just above the seabed, like the tripod fish, and it sports a cluster of barbels around its snout that help lure prey. The short-nosed tripod fish, part of the spikefish family, stands on stiff, spiky pectoral fins that, like the deep-sea tripod fish, raise its body clear of the sediment. And the frogfish? It stands on fin legs too. A classic ambush predator that not only waits but actively fishes, using a lure above its mouth to draw the prey in. All of them suggest a shared strategy: catching their prey, making sure they swallow it properly, and then resting, sleeping, maybe dreaming. Sleeping isn't just for mammals or students. Fish certainly sleep too. A 2024 review in the Journal of Experimental Biology confirms that after a busy day at the office, fish begin to show sleep-like states. Lowered arousal, reduced metabolism, and the general vibe of "don't bother me." You may even know that parrotfish make mucus sleeping bags at night on the reef. And in 2019, scientists nailed the idea that fish sleep in this groundbreaking research at Stanford University, one of the first times that neural activity has been shown at the whole brain level in a vertebrate. They did it by looking at the see-through young of a small striped fish called the danio. Using fish genetically modified with sensitive fluorescent proteins, they could see nerve activity as tiny flashes or glows. Originally developed at the Howard Hughes Medical Institute, the method is still being refined. I'll give you a link to the video below if you want to know more.
This is the top view, this is the view from the front, and this is the view from the side. You can see the different brain areas, the forebrain here in the top. This is the optic tectum, the hindbrain, all the way down to the spinal cord over here. So the red flashes that come up from time to time, particularly this big one just now.
In what they call quiet sleep, there was a gentle flicker across regions of the brain, what they call slow burst or slow wave sleep. And this looks very similar to the sleep activity in the brains of mammals. These experiments, by the way, require strict ethical guidelines and didn't harm the fish during monitoring, and in fact it's not like the invasive techniques of older nerve experiments. So this experimental work shows that fish sleep almost like us, rather than just staying still and resting with nothing going on in their heads. Is that surprising? Well, maybe. Not really. Even jellyfish sleep. They pulse less at night, and if you keep them awake with water pokes, they get sluggish the next day, like they're hungover or waiting for a double espresso. Honestly, this is some work done in 2017 on the jellyfish Cassiopeia, and again I'll give you the reference in the details below. And jellyfish don't even have brains, and it's been thought that sleep in some form or other has been in animals for over 400 million years. Which raises the question, what is sleep really? A pause? A reset? A time for cells to repair? But what about dreaming? If jellyfish can sleep without a brain, then you'd expect fish with their big brains to be more sophisticated and to be able to do much more. Maybe like dreaming. And fish do. The brain imaging methods prove it. So going back to the zebra danio, the scientists discovered, by looking at the flashing brains, that there was another kind of sleep in the fish, a propagating wave sleep, coordinated patterns of nerve cell activities, which they think is similar to REM, rapid eye movement sleep, that we show when we're dreaming. Tripod fish, for obvious reasons, haven't been tested like the danios. But, as we've discussed, it's lifestyle that tells their story. Most deep-sea fish shrink their brains to save energy in the dark, food-scarce depths. But the tripod fish does the opposite, at least where it counts. The parts of its brain that handle touch and smell are quite large. Why? Because it relies on long forward-pointing fins to feel its surroundings and a strong sense of smell to detect food and movement. Its eyes, on the other hand, are barely functional, so it's evolved to see the world through touch and scent instead. The exact feeding method is still unknown, but some suggest it flicks shrimp into its gaping mouth using its fins like hands. But that's never been observed, and the mouth is almost never seen open. More likely, as proposed in a 1977 study, the mouth snaps open briefly when the fins are touched, trapping prey on the gill rakers inside. Deliberate, skillful, sensory-triggered precision may be practiced in sleep. Landing on the seafloor isn't passive either. According to a 2011 study, tripod fish form precise, coordinated landings using their stiff pelvic and tail fins like stilts. They adjust posture, stabilize against currents, and maintain orientation, all without visual cues. It's a kind of blind ballet, guided by touch and internal maps. So what? This isn't just reflex. It's rehearsal-grade behaviour, and wherever you find complex motor control and enlarged brain regions, you find sleep architecture that supports it. We've already seen REM-like sleep in zebrafish, and cephalopods, the octopuses, do it too, showing colours that are just like hunting, even though they're at rest. And if you've got cats and dogs, you'll know it too, sometimes chasing rabbits or mice in the quiet theatre of sleep. They're rehearsing the essential tasks of their brain. For a tripod fish that sits and waits for hours, it's got to be almost certain of catching something, on the rare occasions that it comes along. So, of course, the next obvious question is, what actually might a tripod fish dream? Tuned into the void around it, the ocean hums in unusual frequencies. Not completely silent, but a language of pressure and vibration as little creatures swimming through the water move. In its dreams, does it simulate prey movement? A phantom shrimp darting past? A flick of its tail? A direction to strike? A vacuum of motion as its mouth snaps shut? Or does it dream in abstraction, not of shapes, but of sensations? The tremble of distant movement, the whisper of a current brushing past its lateral line, those channels scored down its side and full of sense organs. So, can you imagine a tripod fish's internal world better now? A fish that never sees daylight, that waits, that listens, that dreams in vibration? You might scoff at the idea that you and a fish could share dreams. And fair enough, you don't. But you do share the capacity to dream. No one would be surprised if those dreams are simpler, more limited, and with less story in fish. But the zebra-danio experiments show that they do dream, and that probably means all fish dream. And why not? If even a jellyfish can sleep, then fish can dream. Not of electric dolphins, but of drifting prey, perfect timing, and the choreography needed to survive in a sunless world.